across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. It is good to have your company. It is Petrie here with you for the next couple of hours. And as I was promising all of last week, the phone-in is back. Popular demand, I have to say. So the phone-in is back. I'm very pleased because it means we get to chat to each other again. So that's coming up at midnight in an hour's time. And also joining us will be Vincent Moss to go through the newspapers. But this topic has always been one that has fascinated me. We talk about domestic violence quite a lot, don't we? We have done on this show anyway. But the last and final taboo about domestic violence, about violence that happens at home, is one where there is shame, there is blame, and there is very little support. And that is the kind of domestic abuse, physical assaults that happen from child to parent. Now, here's one statistic for you. 1 in 10 women who are murdered by a man are murdered by their son. This kind of child-on-parent violence has been increasing rapidly. So what's going on? Why are we seeing children as young as 5 becoming violent towards their parents? And there's another great line here from a parent who is being abused by their children or child. When it's your child hitting you, you can't leave. So because you're the parent and you love them and you want to protect them, you don't even call the police because you don't want them to get a criminal record. You don't call social services because you don't want your other children taken away from you. So what do? This is a real problem, and it is so underreported because parents feel that they'll be told off for not, or worse, have their other children taken away from them, that they're not good parents, that they can't cope somehow. There's an organisation, though, that provides guidance for parents facing violence from their children, and said the number of families asking for help had tripled over the past 3 years. So much so that another organisation in Northumberland is offering self-defence classes for parents to protect them from violent behaviour of their own children. It is not talked about, it is not exposed, and it's not discussed on any level. Government are starting to catch on to this, but they haven't even got a name for it. It's just been going on for as long as anyone can think. So has this affected you? Has it affected somebody in your family? And why do you think it's happening? That's going to be the phone-in at midnight. The number you're going to need, 0344 499 1000. Well, joining me now is Michelle John, founding director of PEGS. This is the Parental Education Growth Support. Michelle, it's really good to meet you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. This has always interested me because there's a friend of mine who was very badly and over several occasions beaten up by her daughter. And she didn't want to talk to anybody about it. I said she was suffering domestic abuse, but she didn't. It was her child, etc., etc. This is so underreported. Do you have any idea how big a problem this is?
No, we don't, to be honest. There's been no national study, I suppose, really, to really understand how many families are impacted. What we know at the moment is other experts and researchers are saying around 1 in 10 families will experience this form of abuse within the UK. but that's the tip of the iceberg. They're the ones that we know about, not the people that we don't. And as you were alluding to earlier on around, sadly, mothers who have been killed by their sons, you're more likely to be killed by your son than a stranger, as research that was shown from the femicide census earlier this year, which is absolutely shocking. And we know as an organisation that nearly 100% of parents reported to us that their child's behaviour started before they were 18. So we know the signs are there. We know parents are reaching out, they're just not being heard, which is horrific. And also on top of that, when you think about, as a parent, you love your child unconditionally. You want them to have the help and support. What you don't want is the behaviour, for example, and you don't want people to judge you, shame you, or your child, because these children aren't demons. We're really clear about that. What they want or what families are saying that they want is to be heard, believed, and actually effective support put in place at the earliest of opportunity, rather than due to escalation.
It is though that shame, right, that any of us would feel, and the concern that other people will judge you as I wouldn't let my child talk to me like that, or why is it's all of that as well wrapped up in that unfortunately the second your child is born, that parental guilt that you feel.
Definitely. And I mean, society judges us, right, when we're parents, on how we give birth,
Everything.
on how we feed our child. So parents are already, criticised. We already feel shame, blame, guilt. We're judged if we go back to work. We're judged if we're not, for example. And it goes on and on. But we're not talking about typical behaviours where perhaps is seen as children just pushing boundaries, or maybe the odd swear word, slamming doors. While, yes, those behaviours are challenging, we are actually talking about extreme behaviours that are seen within intimate partner relationships, for example. We're talking about the physical, the emotional abuse, the coercion, control, sexual abuse too, which is one of the most shocking factors that we found as an organisation. Yet 17% of parents that we support are experiencing inappropriate, harmful, sexualised behaviours from their child, and 5% sexual abuse, including rape and attempted rapes.
Wow.
From children under the age of 16 as well. So we need to be doing more to reach into these families. But the problem is, without a definition, especially for those under the age of 16, because CPA, or child to parent abuse, is mentioned within the DA Act. We were really incredibly, privileged and honoured to be asked to consult on that piece of legislation. But when the child's under 16, there's no recognition. And because the way that the social care framework is at the moment, which is geared primarily towards safeguarding our children, which absolutely we need, we really need those professionals doing that work, we're missing an opportunity here, because the parents quite often are not a risk to their child, so therefore they're missing within that assessment that professionals are going out to perhaps assess, to find out what's going on. And what we're seeing, and I know you alluded to it earlier, around an organisation promoting or providing support around self-defence classes. As an organisation, we wouldn't support that, because what we've seen is where parents have gone down that route before, and then sadly something's happened, and then the self-defence strategies or techniques have been used against the parent, because perhaps a child's come to harm in some way. So it's a real difficult situation for parents at the moment, because they're trying their hardest to get their child the help and support. They're almost invisible, because nobody's really particularly looking at their risks, their voice, asking them what do they need, how safe are they. And also they're trying to keep their family together, keep siblings safe, keep pets safe, and their child in question. So it's this massive circle and cycle that's going on in the UK and further afield at the moment. But particularly what we're seeing is parents' voices are just silenced.
Well, and I guess that they're just thinking, well, we should be able to manage this ourselves. We're the parents. We should be able to do this ourselves.
Definitely. All the parents that we support, and we've supported over 10,000 parents today in the last 5 years, which is incredible. We're having such a high referral rate at the moment, which is sad, but also positive that people are finding us. But parents are, they're reaching out because the things that they've tried don't work anymore. They are honestly, we're so proud of those parents. They're better academic than than any academic I've ever met. They've read everything. They've gone on all the programs. They can write them in their sleep. They want the help. They're coming to services because the things that they're trying just aren't effective for families. Typical parenting programs, one for a better phrase, just don't work for families where child-to-parent abuse is occurring. And also, they're not the best effective method, particularly if you've got a neurodivergent child, for example. So it's finding ways for parents and families that work for them. And sometimes the only way to do that is by saying to the parent, hey, you're the expert here in your family, let me help you. But in order to help you, I need to understand what's working and what isn't working, and what does, safety look like for you.
Good to talk to you, Michelle. Thank you. Michelle John, founding director of PEGS, that's Parental Education Growth Support. Well, joining me now are two parents now, Craig and Louise, who have lived through this horror in their own home. It's good to have you both with me, and it's incredibly brave of you to speak out. Either one of you can start me off on this. What happened? What first led you to understand that you were in an abusive relationship with your child?
I think for me, it took a while to realise that it had become that. It started off as a really small, minor punch, and we thought, okay, this is something we can nip in the bud really quickly. We'll try and shock and awe tactic. We did call the police the first time it happened, but the response we got was not very interested. And I think that fed into, okay, this is okay, I can do this, and there's no consequence. And it just went downhill from there. And I think it took a while to start to realise that if this wasn't your child, this would be classed as domestic violence. Exactly
that. And Louise, how did you feel when, you and Craig came to this conclusion that actually this was an abusive relationship?
I think it took a long time for it to come to that realisation, longer than like you would if it was a partner, for example.
Yeah, I get that.
And you don't want to accept that is the realisation. When I did accept that, there was then the thoughts that where if this was my partner, I would have been able to have left, but because it was my child, I couldn't do that. And there's also like a guilt that comes along with that, because you're the mum and you're supposed to be the one that teaches them right from wrong. And although I've taught them right from wrong, we're obviously in this horrific position.
I mean, absolutely, I hear you completely, and the guilt that you have anyway for everything. But Louise, was it a boy or a girl that was it?
It was a boy.
A boy. So boys often are taller than their mums by the time they're about 12 or 13, especially with me, I'm 5'2". So that then becomes a very different physical relationship, doesn't it? It becomes very different. You can sanction a 7-year-old, you can probably sanction an 8-year-old, but when they get a little bit older, that power balance shifts, particularly with mums, I would say.
I think with my son, he knew that he was stronger than I was. He would often tell me that he was stronger than I was. It was something he was actually quite fixated on. He was taller than I was. And I'm not going to argue that he was stronger than I was. I can't argue with that. But that was something that he got really excited about, almost I'm not sure excited is the right word, but it was something that was definitely prominent to him, that he knew with me. He used to say that I was weak and vulnerable, with his words. Wow. But I think that was because obviously he was taller than me. He did have that upper hand. You're right. I mean, I'm not exactly tall per se. Yeah. So he was, it doesn't take much to be taller than me, but he was taller than me.
And Craig, as the dad, again, it's a totally different feeling of a power shift, right? Because as the dad, you're going to be hopefully feeling like you're dominant to that degree over a son. How did he make you feel when he was being, this way towards Louise?
in that situation, you have no power whatsoever. There's nothing you can really do. You in our particular situation, we were told to just leave him alone, let him get on with it.
What?
We have other children, and I was told to stay with them and protect them, which meant that Louise was just left on her own to deal with it. And from my point of view, you're right, you're supposed to feel like you're the one that can protect everybody, and you have to make a choice between, do I go and protect Louise and keep her safe, but potentially run the risk of him getting to the other children, or do I stay with the children and have to listen to what's going on out there and try and reassure them that Mommy's okay, she'll be all right, don't worry. It's a no-win situation.
It's a horrible situation.
And then when you get professionals telling you that you physically can't do anything, you have to stay away from him, you can't do anything, and then being told that you're doing the wrong thing for calling the police, you shouldn't be doing that. You're completely powerless. There's nothing you can do from our point of view. It was a horrible situation.
How did is this situation still going on, or have you reached a conclusion to it?
I wouldn't say we've reached a conclusion, but we're in a position now where he no longer lives with us.
Right.
We had to say that enough was enough, and after one particularly bad incident, we said that we can't have him here. It's no longer safe. And even then, after that, professionals were still trying to get us to have him back in the house, right up until the court ordered them to house him.
And again, I'm just trying to imagine that the guilt that comes with that, because this is your child. I mean, there are times when you don't like your children, right? I think that's every parent can say that, but you always love them, all right? How was that feeling that you just thought, we cannot have this boy in the house?
It breaks my heart. It's something I still struggle with to this very day. The incident that the incident Craig spoke about then was probably the worst outburst that he'd had, and I genuinely thought that night he was going to kill me. But I still struggle with the fact that he's not here. I still feel like I've let him down almost, because I feel like there should have been more support available for him. I mean, I banged on everybody's door that I could think of, you know, metaphorically. We asked so many services for help, but it almost still feels like a failure on your part as the parent, because he's not here. And it's something that I'll still battle with a lot. I still battle with it most days, because I do miss him. I do love him still very deeply. You can't turn those feelings off. But it's obviously, I have to do what's right for everybody, myself and my other children. And unfortunately for him, I'd like to say that since not being here, he's calmed down with his behaviours. Unfortunately, that isn't the case. But I can only hope that this will open the door for him getting actual obvious support and help that he desperately really does need. And they can't blame the parents now because he's not here.
No, and you shouldn't be blamed anyway. There's far too much of that going around. But
we were, unfortunately.
Yeah, of course you were, because it's the easiest thing to do, isn't it? Just to not look at the problem, but just come up with some stupid conclusion. Do you feel like the system, Craig, enabled your son? The system actually gave him the power and the confidence to carry on getting more and more violent?
100%. He was, during his time living here, I think they said that it was 86 police call-outs, 15 arrests, and of those times, 3 went all the way to the courts. And each time he got off and was told, it's not in the public's interest, you've got to make allowances for him, you've got to give him extra chances and this and that and all the others. He was on cautions, and he still continued to commit offences while he was on these cautions, and every single time it was just, just give him the chance.
Because he was the child, if you like, and the courts are only really used to working the other way around, right? And protecting children from parents.
Yeah. And each time it made him feel like he was untouchable. It just made him worse each time, and he got You can see it getting progressively worse and worse. It started off with one little punch, and then for the very last time, walking out and seeing him stamp all over Louise and genuinely thinking she was dead on the floor, having to drag her by the shoulders to get her away from it. It was just each time got worse and worse.
What would your advice be to those who are listening right now, who know somebody who's going through this, or they're going through it themselves and they feel such shame and guilt that they don't want to expose what's going on in their family?
It's not your fault. There is support out there and you can reach out for it. Social services aren't always the demons that they're made out to be. They can sometimes help, but there are other services out there that are very, very helpful, like PEGS. There are others as well. We accessed quite a few of them and we got some help from them. But it's not your fault is the main thing, and there's no shame in reaching out for help, would be my advice.
I just want to say, it's not really my place to say it, but I'm so incredibly proud of both of you for talking to me about this and for sharing your story, because this will help. This will help, I promise you. This will help other people who are just now recognising that they are in the same position you were in. So thank you.
That's one of the things I would say to anyone who's watching this who is going through that, or even if you suspect that someone you know is going through that, is don't be afraid to ask, don't be afraid to talk. I owe some of my darkest moments to a good couple of my friends who I was able to reach out to without judgment, without the worry of, oh my God, they're going to think I'm a terrible parent. Oh my God, what am I doing? There was only a couple of people that I felt like I could do that with. But those people carried me through even on my darkest nights. And they still carry me through to this day, I'm not going to lie. It's not always easy. We still have those up and downs. But they still carry me, they still listen to me, they still care. They still show me that they're there, and they don't judge. And they might not have been through it themselves, and hopefully they'll never have to go through it themselves. But just knowing that somebody's there and you're not alone is such a big thing in a time when you feel completely isolated from the rest of the world, because it's such a taboo subject that nobody wants to speak about, and you don't really know. It's not something you ever dream of when you become a parent, that you think you're going to go through this. So I think it's finding that one or two people that you can just offload to, that will just listen and be there and just not judgmental.
I think that's the other part of it as well, is if you see something like that as a member of the public, it's not the parents' fault. Don't automatically go, oh, my kid would never have done that, or I wouldn't let mine do that. That's not the case. It's not the parents' fault.
Well, I think you're both incredible and obviously brilliant parents. So thank you so much for joining me on this topic, and we're going to try and lift the veil on it and make sure it isn't taboo and that people can talk about it. Craig and Louise, thank you. So that's what we're going to be discussing. It is unthinkable, isn't it? It's hard to imagine. Like I said, if it's your partner hitting you, you can leave. If it's your kid, you can't. So give me a call on this topic, 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie with you, and please do give me a call on this. And even if you haven't got any experience yourself of this kind of child on parent abuse, I wonder if you wonder why this is increasing. Why is it? I mean, there's always people always say it could be more people reporting, but it does seem to me that this is beyond that. That actually more children are feeling more empowered. Perhaps it's social media, perhaps it's a lack of discipline. I don't know, what do you think is causing this? These children feeling that they can abuse their parents. And some of them, you heard from Michelle, John from Pegs, saying some of it is sexual abuse. I mean, it is unthinkable, but it's happening. And it's happening now, out there somewhere. Probably maybe your neighbour. Maybe your cousin, maybe your family, who knows, because nobody talks about it. So let's talk about it and give me a call. 0344 499 1000. These things only exist because they exist in the dark. If we shine some light on it, things can change. Well, joining me now is Vincent Moss. He's here to go through the papers, but I did just want to ask you about this topic, because I mean, hopefully very few people are going to have actual experience of this, but we know that that is growing. It's unthinkable, isn't it, that 1 in 10 women who are murdered is murdered by their child, by their son.
Yeah, terrible statistic, and I didn't realise the scope of it until just listening to your guests there and Michelle John, who was talking about how many thousands of people are affected by this. And it reminds me of sort of how many years ago people didn't talk about mental health, and that was a taboo, and now of course everybody does talk about it. And this feels like a similar issue where it's something that isn't talked about. People don't talk about it. Parents tend to feel potentially ashamed, which of course they shouldn't do about it. And it's now good that people like Craig and Louise starting to talk about it and shine a light on it, and I hope that will give other parents the courage to step forward and seek the help that they probably need to deal with this. I mean, young people nowadays, I think it's the impact of social media, where they feel emboldened to be more outspoken, physically abusive as well as verbally abusive, and it's also kids get very big nowadays, as you were saying earlier. I mean, it's not uncommon for people to have sons and daughters who are bigger than their parents. They grow to 6 foot, 6'2", and they can be very physically threatening. So a horrendous story, and I'm glad that you're shining a light on it, and that Craig and Louise were brave enough to come forward. I mean, that is
extraordinary. I have a lot of admiration, because this does feel, you're absolutely right, a sort of a watershed moment where it isn't talked about, and Craig and Louise being so open and so honest about their own situation, I think is phenomenal, because it does take people to step out of that shadow and begin to talk about these things. Like you said, with mental health, it was totally, I mean, cancer was taboo at one point, wasn't it? Nobody would admit to having cancer because they felt that it was shameful to have cancer. And then it was mental health, and domestic abuse as well was a very hidden phenomenon that was going on. And this now feels like we need to shine a light on this, to give parents the power to step forward and get that help.
Yes, because there's nothing to be ashamed about if you cannot control your children. Sometimes it's a product of their own poor mental health or all sorts of other things. It's not the parents, 9 times out of 10, I'm sure, who are to blame for their children running out of control and resorting to violence and abuse. And it's important that parents realise that and seek help from organisations that can offer the help that they need. And it just shows that even with some of that help, sometimes it's impossible to keep their son or daughter in the home because they're so violent and so dangerous.
But again, interesting, when I asked Craig if he felt that the system had empowered his son, and he said absolutely. The system did not take it. So it was all about protecting the child from the parent, which of course we know is something that has to happen. But it seems like the system is very slow sometimes to catch up to being told, no, it's the other way round. And as you said, 13-year-olds, 11-year-olds can be really, especially when you're a mum.
Yes.
I mean, I'm 5'2". I think my son was taller than me at 11, 12. But it's not difficult to see that if a child feels empowered, and you've got a lot of single parents as well out there who haven't got, you know, somebody like Craig to protect the other children while Louise is being beaten up.
Yeah, and if they're listening to either voices in their peer group or in particular certain voices, bad actors on social media, that emboldens them to step forward and take action in a way I'm sure they would never have thought of 10 or 15 years ago, because they wouldn't have had those influences to hand in the way they do now, literally, because these voices are on their phones or on their tablets, and they're hearing those voices, and that's giving them leading them down the wrong path, and giving them the courage is the wrong word, but giving them the sort of the confidence, if you like, to take on their parents.
Yeah, I mean, it must be something to do with social. It must be. Because, like you said, they'll find their people, right? Oh, I've just beaten up my mum. Oh, great. You know what I mean? They find the people who echo back at them their own position on things. Honestly, I'm so glad that was not a thing when I was bringing my son up in his sort of formative years. So that's what we're going to be talking about at midnight, and I would love you to contribute to this, whether you just have an opinion on why you think this is happening, or indeed have lived through it or are living through it. We can change your name, don't worry about that. We'll change where you're from and your name. If you fancy giving me a call, we will do everything we can to protect your identity, although I genuinely don't think that you need it for shame reasons or guilt reasons, but it's entirely up to you. My team will absolutely change your name. I won't even know it. So please do pick up the phone. Be brave, like Craig and Louise, because you're going to help somebody. I promise you, whenever we do these phone-ins, this type of phone-in, there are so many people that hear your voice and they really, really feel strengthened by it, and they feel that they're not alone. So please do pick up the phone, 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it's Petrie, and the phone-in is back with a vengeance. So please do get ready to join in the conversation. It's all for you, it's all about you, and I have missed talking to you. So please do pick up the phone, 0344 499 1000. Now though, with Vincent, we're going to go through the papers for Tuesday. This Prince Andrew stuff, blimey. When I first saw Vincent, I think it was on Friday, that he'd been stripped of his titles, I thought, oh, this is fake news, this is not true, it's not real. Blimey. He could be stripped of Prince.
Well, that's a hard one, because he was born a prince, but people are calling for that. They want it to happen.
I mean, the scandals just keep mounting, don't they? And I suppose Charles has got to do everything he can to preserve the firm.
Very much so. I mean, Prince Andrew's all over the papers. Meanwhile, Prince Charles today was visiting the mosque, the synagogue in Manchester, and visiting the victims of the horrendous attack there. And that's what he wanted to be on the news and the story and potentially on the front pages. And instead, it's his errant brother who is all over the front pages.
And this scandal, the latest, is that he asked his close protection officer, who's a Metropolitan Police officer, to apparently to dig up some dirt on Virginia Giuffre.
Yeah, very much so. The Mirror's reporting that the Prince, which we did know, had asked his close protection officers to dig the dirt on Virginia Giuffre just before that infamous picture emerged of Prince Andrew with her when she was Virginia Roberts, and Ghislaine Maxwell pictured there as well. And he was trying to mount a smear campaign on her to damage her ahead of the first revelations of him emerging. So the headline on the Mirror is, what did the palace know and what did they do about this?
I mean, it's all now just roller coasting, isn't it? Because we've actually got, I think, Virginia Giuffre's book comes out tomorrow, I think.
Yeah.
I think it comes out on Tuesday or Wednesday. And so that is going to have more in it, or at least it is going to repeat the allegations against Prince Andrew, and it will all come up again. This is never going to go away.
Very much so. I mean, I think there's at least 3 mentions of Prince Andrew in the book, alleging that he abused. This book's of course coming out posthumously because Virginia took her own life. At least 3 allegations that he abused her because she was underage and they had sex on 3 occasions. So very serious allegations, and the wider allegation is she thought she would die a sex slave, as she put it in the book. So serious stuff, and a story that just won't go away as far as the palace is concerned.
Yeah, no, it's going to keep, and you know, if there is any truth to it, absolutely right, it should be haunting. It should be haunting him. The Sun newspaper, Katie's ex charged with raping a girl who's 13 years old. So this is, I don't, which ex? She's quite a few. Katie Price's ex-husband Kieran Hayler has been charged with 3 counts of rape and 1 of sexual assault against a girl aged 13. These are alleged to have taken place in 2016. So, I mean, this is just a charge. This is just an allegation at this stage. There's not an awful lot we can say about it. But interesting, though, that Katie has come out, hasn't she, recently, and said who her rapist was, which we don't know.
No, exactly. She's alleged that she was raped, and more allegations against her ex here, although it's made clear in the story that the accuser is not a member of their extended family, which I think is an important point.
Yes.
So, but he could be facing court, and yet more sort of problems, if you like, for Katie Price, who's quite often in the headlines.
Yeah, absolutely. The Times newspaper met to stop investigating non-crime hate after Linehan case. Now, if it's a non-crime, I've always wondered why they were investigating a non-crime anyway, because a non-crime means it's not a crime, which therefore doesn't need to be investigated by police.
That's what you would think, and there was a lot of opposition to the fact that police were investigating these sort of online posts, and the comedian Graham Linehan was sort of investigated because he was arrested after 3 gender-critical tweets, and now the police have said they're not going to investigate it, not take it any further, and the decision's been fairly widely welcomed because it means the police should be able to focus more on what's seen as sort of actual criminal offences rather than things that are just posted online that some people take issue with. So, and the Met is saying that such incidents will still be recorded and used as intelligence and continue to investigate those who commit hate crimes. But very much this is a victory for those people who'd sort of said that it was a bit of a waste of police time just to be investigating
absolutely
posts.
It is. I mean, a hate crime is different to a non-crime hate, all right? I mean, you know, we know the difference. We know the difference, and we know the difference between freedom of speech and where that line is drawn, and that is you mustn't incite violence or hatred towards another group. But anything else, even if it's abhorrent, and toxic and nasty. If people want to say those horrible, toxic, nasty, abhorrent things, fine. They should be allowed to do that, and not be put up on some list when it's not a crime. We know the difference.
That's right.
As journalists, we're taught that on day one. People
know the difference, and I think people were just fed up with seeing several police tied up in this sort of stuff, and then having their own burglaries and facing serious assaults and things like that, and not seeing that stuff investigated. And it means the police can hopefully prioritise those ahead of these sort of what's seen by most people as relatively low-level
stupid comments. Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. Let's go to a good news story now, because this is amazing. Electronic eye enables the blind to see again. Blind people who had a microchip inserted in the back of their eyeball, I mean, I could almost cry reading this. This is amazing. Have been able to read again in a medical breakthrough that heralds a new era of treatment. There's a lot of blindness in my family. My grandmother was blind, my uncle was blind, his brothers were also blind. So there was a lot of blindness in my family. And the idea that and there are different causes for blindness, so I'm not sure this is all blindness, but this is amazing. This is where technology should be going, right?
Well, medical advances, and this is just another one of them, are going at such a pace at the moment, and this is for people who've got age-related macular degeneration, which previously was an untreatable condition.
Completely untreatable.
Absolutely untreatable, and now these tiny little microchips that you could get inserted in the back of your eyeball has helped some of these people in this 2-hour operation read again, which is just remarkable, and people never thought it would happen to them. So it's just astonishing the pace of technological change and people being able to see again, because people who thought they had like literally irreversible conditions are now able to read books, and it cites
do
one
crosswords and recognise faces. I mean, it is an extraordinary breakthrough.
Yeah, and the Times reports it would give hope to millions of patients around the world, and is expected to be submitted to medical regulators for approval on the NHS. I guess the next question will be how expensive it is, and will there be the budget there to afford to treat all the people that could benefit from it?
I mean, surely eyesight is one of the things that no money can...
You'd hope so.
You would hope, wouldn't you? I mean, I went for an eye test last week, actually, and on Friday, and I was told I have no macular degeneration, which I'm very happy about. And my optician said, I think you're lying about your age. Don't know if he was flirting or not, maybe. Because that is, because of the blindness in my family, I am very aware of it, and very... I'm not afraid of it, because they were amazing people. I mean, the amount of people I've met who've lost their eyesight, who are just incredible how they cope with it. I think they're heroes. You know, even going out to the shops is a brave act if you haven't got your eyesight. I mean, these people are extraordinary. I love them. I think they're amazing. But the idea that they could read a book, do a crossword, that is breathtaking to me. That is just wonderful. I'm so pleased with that. And that's what I want my money, that's what I want my tax spent on. I don't care how expensive that is. Give them back their eyesight. Exactly. Give them back their eyesight.
There is a very good story on the Times, that story about Prince Andrew. Seems to have this, the Times seems to have uncovered, and it's an exclusive, that Prince Andrew's not paid any rent on his Grace and Favour mansion in Windsor Estate for 2 decades. He's not paid any rent since 2003, and people have often wondered how he could afford to live there, because he had his money withdrawn by Charles, King Charles, and according to the Times, it states he paid £1 million for the lease on this 30-room mansion, and he also paid £7.5 million for the refurbishments, and they were completed in 2005. But since 2003, he's only paid a peppercorn rent, i.e. nothing, and he's entitled, him and his family, to stay there for pretty much forever. I think they can stay there until 2078. So effectively, even though he paid that large sum of money up front, he's effectively only paying about £113,000 a year, which sounds a lot, but when you're living in what's effectively a palace, it's not much.
But it's obviously also supported by the taxpayer. Any refurbishment that needed to be done, I mean, it's a Crown Estate property, so therefore quite a bit of that would have been picked up by us.
It will,
obviously.
and there'll be pressure on him to move out.
Yeah, yeah. He's done for, isn't he? He's really and her.
Both of them.
She was supported by Epstein for 15 years.
Yeah, and even after he got into trouble, was asking for money to help pay the bills. So yeah, they're both
They're neck deep in it.
Yeah, they are.
They really are. It's so grubby. It's just grubby. Powell's attack on Starmer is the Independent. Lucy Powell has issued a major challenge to Sir Keir Starmer's authority, insisting she will push the PM to change Labour's direction in a bid to rescue the party's polling rates. Just going to have much of a... Not really going to affect
I don't think so. I mean, there's a two-horse race for the Labour deputy leadership. Lucy Powell is the front runner over Bridget Phillipson. Voting closes on Thursday. She may well win, but at the end of the day, I can't see it changing things too much. They've both got to try and appeal to the sort of Labour grassroots, most of whom are a bit fed up with the leadership and Keir Starmer. So they're all saying they would do things differently. But at the end of the day, they're only the deputy leader. They haven't really got any power to do anything differently.
They haven't got any power. And actually, I think it's probably too late for this government.
That seems to be what most people think, and most people have made up their mind. It's still 3 or 4 years to a general election, a lot can change, but the polling ratings are pretty dire. Yeah,
really dire. The Guardian, let's have a look. The Prince tries to hire trolls to target Giuffre, the book claims. We talked about that. Electronic eye implant. Amazing. And then this story, mutilated Palestinians linked to torture jail. At least 135 mutilated bodies of Palestinians returned by Israel to Gaza had been held in a notorious detention centre, already facing allegations of torture and unlawful deaths in custody. I mean, if this turns out to be true, that's another war crime.
It is, and we heard so much about the mistreatment of the Israeli hostages in Gaza that it's now that some of the Palestinian bodies are being returned to Gaza, there are these allegations that detainees were held in cages, blindfolded, handcuffed, shackled to hospital beds and forced to wear nappies. So, you know, horrendous conditions, and at a time when the ceasefire seems perilously fragile and there seem to be all sorts of breaches of the ceasefire going on. So things potentially hanging by a thread in Gaza at the moment.
Which I'm afraid was when you start seeing things like this, it's not going to be helpful at all to any form of lasting peace anyway. The Daily Express, for the safety and dignity of every woman and girl. These are the brave NHS nurses waging historic fight for female-only spaces.
Yes, Express has got a picture of this group of women who are fighting for female-only spaces, and they've launched a challenge to County Durham and Darlington NHS Foundation because it's allowed a man identifying as Rose to use the female-only changing rooms. So they're fighting that, and it's a landmark in employment tribunal, says the Express, to clarify their rights because they want to be able to undress at work without a man being present in their changing rooms, which seems an entirely reasonable position.
Well, it does, especially, I mean, I don't know anything about Rose, but if Rose, this could be anybody, right, saying that they identify as a woman. If Rose hasn't been through transgender, hormones or surgery or whatever, I don't know anything about her. But I can't see anything wrong with having, a female-only changing space, a male-only changing space, and another changing space.
Well, that's what you'd have thought would be the logical solution to this problem, but it's become one of these sort of defining arguments in the sort of trans rights rows, and this seems to be one of those cases that's going to test what the position is, because the NHS is one of the places where this seems to be a bigger problem than in other workplaces. It does seem to be something that's particularly prevalent in the NHS at the moment.
Yeah, it does. And I just think, do you know what? Every time I read a story like this, it just really harms those trans men and women who are just trying to get on with their lives.
Yeah.
They don't want this. They don't need this. They just want to be accepted. A trans friend of mine said the only thing that she wants to do is to not have people stare at her when she walks in a room.
Yeah.
That's all she wants. Doesn't need any of that stuff. The Eye has gone with the revolutionary bionic chip, helping, as it should be front page on every single newspaper People who have lost their vision given the ability to read again thanks to a 2 mm electronic eye implant, and it's attached to glasses, these smart glasses. I don't know, I mean, I'm not even going to pretend I know how it works, but it's extraordinary, amazing. And it can help people with macular degeneration that affects 1 in 4 legally blind people in the UK. Amazing, absolutely amazing.
Huge advance.
Yeah. And will AI take your job? Doctor, solicitor, musician, put it to the test.
Just looking at that, it does. A lot of people must be wondering that at the moment about whether AI is going to take their
Apparently
job.
journalism has done.
I think journalism, writing, creative industries, music, it's potentially a real threat to in a bad way, but it looks as though those jobs that you do with your hands are a little bit safer. So people who sort of, if you're perhaps a hairdresser, got a bit longer, I think, potentially, and if you've got a particular skills that can only be done, or you're an interpersonal skills, like, so if you're a carer, I mean, I think although they're probably going to develop robots that can do social care fairly soon, people still want humans doing those jobs. But there are a lot of jobs, certainly doctors, medics, solicitors, I think they're nearly at the top of the list.
Solicitors, definitely, because you know, there must be a cheaper way now of getting case law and figuring it out. I mean, it's really not going to be long before those jobs are taken over. And I know that people who write professionally, they're saying all of their business is gone.
Yeah, people who are copywriters, absolutely,
It's gone. It's just absolutely gone. Right, the Daily Telegraph. Grooming inquiry sabotaged by Labour. Starmer told to scrap plans and start again after victims quit, saying they were silenced. This is about some of the young women who were involved in these grooming gangs, or who were victims of these grooming gangs, have walked away.
Yes, I mean, Keir Starmer was under a lot of pressure to launch these inquiries, and he finally did, and now they don't seem to be going that well, because at least 2 women, Fiona Goddard and Ellie Reynolds, have said, who were both groomed by gangs as teenagers, have said they're resigning because they don't like the way these inquiries are being set up. I think they've appointed a police officer and a social worker to be advisors on the inquiries, and of course many people blame the police and social workers for being not acting fast enough when these allegations were being made. So the Prime Minister is now under pressure to sort of start over again and potentially scrap the current inquiry and launch a new one run by a judge. So these grooming inquiries that there's a lot of pressure to get underway now seem to be mired in controversy and potentially under threat, and big calls for them to be done in a different way.
It's a shambles, isn't it? It's a shambles. I mean, the fact that it wasn't going to happen in the first place, and then they couldn't find the right inquiry lead, and then people are now walking away. It's just, it couldn't run a bath. I mean, no. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, and you've got the terrible position where the victims, who should be absolutely at the centre of the inquiry, are now claiming that they've been silenced by what they see as condescending and controlling language being used towards them. So, I mean, the key thing has to be to get the victims on board, and they seem to be very on board with the way this inquiry is going so far.
Mean, this has got to all be about the victims, that they're the ones that know what happened, right? I mean, it just feels, I don't want to say cover up, but it feels like they've already want their conclusion reached, and so they're sort of reverse engineering the inquiry to reach that conclusion. That's what it feels like. Let's have a look at the Daily Mail. How can Andrew afford the Royal Lodge? Well, we know.
Well, this is it. I suspect the Daily Mail front page may change before its last edition, because the Mail's asking the question, how can he afford to live in Royal Lodge, the 30-room mansion in Windsor Park we were talking about earlier? Well, it looks, according to the Times, he can afford to live there because he cut a very sweet deal on the lease, and that's how he manages to do it. But it just goes to the heart of the fact that these questions about how much money and how he made his money Prince Andrew's got will continue to be asked, because there's also, which we haven't touched upon yet, his role as a trade envoy for many years, and how the papers and the details behind that apparently, I think, are going to remain secret for 105 years from the date of his birth or something like that. So that, now, if that was any other government role, you'd expect to know about all of that. So there'll be questions are going to continue for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it's just going to be a running sore, unfortunately, for the royal family.
It really will be, and it seems that from what I've been reading is that, Prince William is going to come down very hard on Prince Andrew. I mean, the King has already tried to do that. As he's taken his money away, he's told him he's got to move out of this place, but he doesn't want to, so he's not going to. Now those titles have been taken away, but William might go a bit harder on him.
Yes, there's no doubt that William's already sort of made clear, I think in the Sunday Times that weekend it was reported that he will not be welcome Prince Andrew at the coronation of Prince William's eventually when he does succeed his father. So, I suspect it'll be a lot tougher action from William.
I think it will go down to Beatrice and Eugenie as well. Yeah. We need to clear them all out. Vincent, let's start again.
Yeah.
Vincent Moss, thank you very much indeed. The phone in is next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. It is Petrie here with you, and we are back to the phone in. So we have a full hour of your voices, and we started off with the programme with some extraordinary interviews. If you missed them, I'm hoping to play out a few clips of them a little bit later. But we're talking about children who abuse their parents. So this is children as young as 5 years old when it begins, who are either physically abusing their parents, sexually abusing their parents, coercively controlling their parents. And this is a really taboo topic. This is a story that people don't talk about. Parents don't want to talk about it. They're they feel ashamed, they feel guilty, they don't want to talk to anybody about it because they think it makes them look like they're bad parents, or that in some regard that this is their fault. But it is a growing problem. It is escalating at an incredible pace. 1 in 10 women who are murdered by a man are murdered by their son. It is an extraordinary statistic, and there are many more around this topic of parents who are being abused by their children. And this has always been something that has fascinated me, that nobody talks about, and I completely understand why nobody talks about it. I completely understand why parents don't want to talk about this, because it is, what can you do? I mean, when it's your kids hitting you, you can't leave. If it was your partner, there's a way out of that, right? There's an accepted way out of that. There's a way that society will support you in that. There is a way that your friends and family will support you in that. My husband or my wife is beating me, so they'll go, oh, come here. Can you imagine having to tell family, it's my child, my 13-year-old, my 14-year-old, my 9-year-old is abusing me? What is their likely response going to be to that? And I'll tell you what the likely response is. Oh, just pull yourself together, sort them out, bit of discipline, that'll sort them out. And these parents have been quiet. They've been killed by their own children. And they love their children, even if they don't like what they're doing. And they try to protect their children. They don't want to call the police because the police might arrest them and give them a criminal record which will stay with them for the rest of their lives, and you'd feel guilty about that. They don't want to call social services because if they call social services, they might take their other children away. They don't want to tell family and friends because their family and friends will judge them. So this is a topic that is so incredibly sensitive, but it needs a light shining on it, because there are parents right now, you are listening to me right now, and this is you. This is happening to you, and you think you're alone, and you're not. You are not alone, and you are not to blame. To be honest, I think society as a whole is to blame. Children have now been empowered, haven't they? Children are taught there is nothing to fear. And fear is actually, I think, really healthy, to be honest. I feared going to prison. I fear I don't fear police, but you know what I mean. All of that. So society is set up to protect children from their parents, not parents from their children. And earlier on, I spoke to Michelle John from PEGS, which is Parental Education Growth Support, who told me about the abuse that parents can suffer from their own children. Have a listen.
You know, we're talking about the physical, the emotional abuse, the coercion, control, sexual abuse too, which is one of the most shocking factors that we found as an organisation. Yet 17% of parents that we support are experiencing inappropriate, harmful sexualised behaviours from their child, and 5% sexual abuse, including rape and attempted rapes.
Wow.
From children under the age of 16 as well. Because the way that the social care framework is at the moment, which is geared primarily towards safeguarding our children, which absolutely we need, you know, we really need those professionals doing that work. We're missing an opportunity here because the parents quite often are not a risk to their child, so therefore they're missing within that assessment that professionals are going out to perhaps assess, to find out what's going on. So it's a real difficult situation for parents at the moment because they're trying their hardest to get their child the help and support. They're almost invisible because nobody's really particularly looking at their risks, their voice, you know, asking them what do they need, how safe are they. And also they're trying to keep their family together, keep siblings safe, keep pets safe and their child in question. So it's this massive circle and cycle that's going on in the UK and further afield at the moment. But particularly what we're seeing is parents' voices are just silenced.
Well, I mean, that was just the tip of the iceberg that she was talking to me about there. Give me a call. Why do you think this is happening? Have you experienced this? Were you even aware that it is a real growing problem? 0344 499 1000. Well, joining me now is, it's Anne from London, who has bravely taken this opportunity to give me a call, and I really do appreciate, Anne, you doing this. Tell me your story.
Yes, I just turned over about half an hour when you brought this subject up, and I just couldn't believe it because this was my life. I was a single parent, and it was my daughter who was abusing me, as opposed to a son. And it started off with throwing things at me. She didn't actually hit me, but she'd throw things at me, and a few times I nearly got injured. And she also got a knife out of the drawer and slashed my tyres. There was coercive control as well. Like the couple you were talking to, I called the police on numerous occasions. They couldn't do anything about it. They did actually interview her on one occasion over her behaviour, and it didn't make any difference. I had a senior social worker that was working with me, with my daughter, and she ended up saying to me, this is normal teenage behaviour. This is what teenagers are like. And I knew that couldn't be right. And I became very isolated. The blame game was enormous. My neighbours knew what was happening, and I became notorious in that certain street. I had to leave. I sold my previous marital home, and I moved again to a temporary place where she came to, and she did the same again. And then I moved into the country, and she found where I was living through an internet thing, and she came after me. And so 3 homes she pushed me out of, even after she was 18. So I took her to court, and I had a non-molestation and a non-occupation order against her, so she couldn't come anywhere near me. And she was then found, my solicitor said the authorities will look after her, and she was put into a homeless hostel where she still is now. And I'm trying to build bridges with her now, only now.
What age did this start, Anne?
Okay, funnily enough, I was trying to write down some notes. My ex-husband left me when she was about 11, and she was starting secondary school, and it slowly escalated from there. It seemed to get worse and worse. She got to about, her hate back, she bunked off school. She wasn't going to school. And then the swearing was off the scale, what she'd say to me. Horrendous things like, I wish you'd die and I'll dance on your grave. And I told my neighbour that, and she burst into tears. But this behaviour became so normalised. My neighbours actually said to me on the other side in the adjoining house, they actually said to me, they heard the screaming and the shouting, and they were waiting for it to go silent, and they thought one of us would be dead. That's what they told me. She threw tins of food at me. She threw tins of food at the walls. She wouldn't eat the food I made her. She'd just tip it up in the kitchen. She raided my freezer and told everybody that I was starving her. So I just had all of this against me. I had to give up work to stay at home to protect myself. Luckily, I'm an older mother, but I was so I could retire. But the behaviour was just horrendous, and trying to keep it secret was dreadful. Yeah. I did tell, I've got two sisters and a brother who I'm close to, and I did two of my sisters were very supportive, and I did tell them everything. I tried to protect my mother against them as well. She's now completely, funnily enough, she's just turned 22, so I'm out of it now, and she's living in this homeless hostel. There's a lot of being said about her mental situation, saying she's mentally ill. But once they get over 18, under 16, I couldn't do anything. 18, I couldn't do anything about it. Once she got to 18, the doctor said, I can't discuss this with you. She's over the age. Mm. The other interesting point is the other couple were saying about, people said to me, well, or whoever knew about it, why don't, when she goes to the shops, why don't you just lock her out of the house? You don't have to have her, throw her out. I told the social worker that this is what I was going to do, and she said, right, if you do that with a child under 18, it's called abandonment, and we'll take you to court over it. So many people had advice, but she'd hide my car key, for example, so I couldn't escape. And the social worker's solution to this was just go out for a walk. You know this isn't going to end well. Just go out. So I'd be walking the streets at 11:30, midnight, to get away from her escalating behaviour. And I would come home to find she'd wrecked the house. She'd thrown things, my clothes, shoes, contents of drawers, down the stairs. She'd throw some, as I say, food was one of her obsessions. She threw that at the wall. And she wrecked every single door handle in my house by slamming the doors so badly. The social worker said, well, just put a towel on top of the door. Well, I did that, and she tore the towel off. So I was having this behaviour. I was living this day in, day out. I didn't provoke it, but just the fact that I was there, I was a punch ball. I tried to go out during the day to meet people and do things. She wasn't at school, and she had mixed. She went out with other teenagers, and I had no control over that at the time. She'd go out to a park overnight. I knew she was smoking dope. A few times I called the police, and there was a few sort of kids like her, teenagers, that spent the whole night in the park until the early hours. I had no control of her at all. I did lose her once or twice, and I had to get the police involved in a search to try and find her. But she was completely out of control. And my solicitor, who I went to and told the full story to in the end, who specialised in these sort of, well, not this particularly, but these sort of cases, she actually told me to leave my house, where the third house I'm living in. I had to go and stay in a safe sanctuary somewhere else. And she said, I'm afraid that you will either be attacked, or there's a serious case that you might be murdered. And I thought to myself at the time, what? Now, I have been in touch with PEGS. PEGS have helped me a lot. I do a Zoom call with other people, but the stories I hear are just so horrendous. I've just got caught up in all of their stories and think, well, gosh, at least I'm out of it. But a horrendous story. But it's, of an Asian woman with two young children, where her son was throwing a chain at her. She was a very small woman, and leaving marks of a chain on her. And she was sleeping in the car, and her husband was trying to divorce her and blaming her behaviour. And they were trying, the social workers were trying to take 3 of her children off her. So these cases I heard from other people were purely horrendous.
The thing is that listening to that,
Yeah.
I mean, just your home is supposed to be your safe place for a start.
Yeah.
So even if you went out and you came back in, you don't know what you're going to be confronted. I mean, that is just horrendous. And because it's your child,
Yes.
You can't just, like I said, if it was a partner, you'd have lots of support, you'd have lots of people understanding it, and not blaming you, not blaming the victim. But when it's your child, people want to blame the victim.
The blame game was enormous. It caused problems within my family. I can't go into too many details because it might be identifiable. But, so someone did turn against me and refused to speak to me. I've also had a neighbour here where I am now, but she's moved out next door to me, who refuses to speak to me. She just snubs me. And they were talking about me over the fence, and one of them said to the other, I said, what would you do about it in the end? I said, if it's your daughter, what would you do about it, you see? And they said to me, oh, you're calling your daughter it? How awful. What a terrible parent you are. What an awful person you are. That's 2 of my neighbours who have been ostracised against, who I don't tell. So I've had to live in secret where I am here, which is what they told me to do at Peg's, is to isolate you in a new place. I bought a new property, and she found out where I was living through an online thing, and she got my address and got a taxi driver to drive here, and literally she had her stuff in bags on the doorstep, and she moved in, and that was it. And it started building up again, until I went to a solicitor and went to another safe house of a relative. And the solicitor, it cost me £6,000. And as I say, I got these 2 injunctions. They told her to get out by a certain time, just before Christmas 2 years ago. You need out. And if she was defaulted on any of those things, that was a prison sentence. She would have a prison sentence, up to 4 years, apparently.
So was there at any point that you could call on your ex to help? You said your husband left when she was about 11.
Okay. Well, the blame game, it was all my fault at first, and he kept on and kept on. I then found an article in the U magazine, in the Daily Mail, and it was my life. And I photocopied it and sent it everywhere he's got a new wife, everywhere. Anybody that I knew, I sent it to them without any explanation. I just addressed it to them so they could read it. My sister said she read it to her partner, who's blind, funnily enough, and he read it to him, and he said 98% of that is true. And it was a boy on mother, a single parent again. But they said it's more likely to be a male, but my daughter was a female, so abuse happens across the...
Yeah, my friend was abused by her daughter. Physically,
and
broke her nose.
My ex-husband kept out. He blamed me. So then his parents, their grandparents, sort of said, "Oh, my mother-in-law kept saying to me, oh, you're so lucky to have a daughter. She hadn't got one. She said, try and enjoy her while you can." So I screened it from her. She's since died in COVID. So I screened it and didn't say too much to her. But my ex, and now my daughter, won't speak to him. She's completely alienated him, and she hasn't spoken to him for about 2 or 3 years, and she never wants to speak to him again.
And you're reaching back out to your daughter now to try and build a relationship.
Yes,
with
what's
her.
happening now, I can watch this, and it is distressing for me to go over it, so I know what it's like to be in that terrible place. It's horrendous when you're suffering from it, but she did get better. She's now living in a hostel about 3/4 of an hour away. I do go and visit her, and we go out for a meal or just shopping, and she's okay, but there's still the coercive control. Give me money.
Yeah.
She won't tell me what she's doing. Whether I don't know about a relationship, I'm not even sure whether she's non-binary or whatever they call themselves. I don't know. But she seems to have found some sort of friends, but she won't tell me anything about her life.
Yeah, that's controlling.
It is. And if I see anybody that she sees, she gets really stroppy and says, don't be silly, don't make a face, that sort of behaviour.
Well,
so
credit to you. Credit to you for trying, but if her behaviour doesn't change, she's just not... It's going to be the same stuff, isn't it?
It is. I don't know when and what happens now to these certain individuals. I really don't. She's never worked, so she's one of these idle, the government's trying to get rid of. They all seem to be like that in this hostel. There's about 40, 50 people in this hostel, I think 40 actually, and they've all got problems. They've all come from broken families and everything else. And it's across the board, really, because we're not a Jeremy Kyle family. We're quite middle class, and not, I'm not saying that to be snobby, but this can happen.
Absolutely. Everybody always, they pigeonhole, don't they, and go, this is just single parents. Well, we know that's not true. This is just, poor families. We know that that's not true. So, this is breaking all those taboos down. This can happen to anybody, like domestic abuse can happen to anybody. In your opinion, what do you think caused her to do it? Was it society that empowered her? Was it that the system didn't punish her?
Yeah. You know what? I don't know, and neither do my family. You could say my ex leaving me could have been.
It shifts the power dynamic, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. He walked out, and it was very traumatic for me, but I tried to keep things going.
Yeah, I think it's that subtle power dynamic, isn't it? It's like, oh, well, he's gone. Yeah. And maybe that gave her the idea that she could be in control. Yes,
I think that was the case. Some of it is personality, I believe. I can't explain. I mean, strong-willed isn't the word. And when she was a baby, she was very, very difficult. When she was a tot, she was very difficult behaviour. And when she got to be a teenager, she just was off the scale, if you see what I mean.
Well, I mean, what you've been through, Anne, and having to live with that, day in, day out, month in, month out, year in, year out, quite, for me, just simply horrific. And the fact that you're trying to reach out to, I think, is absolute credit to you. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I could. But Anne, just making that call, I promise you, somebody's heard that. And that has helped them. So thank you so, so much for picking up the phone. I've got to take a break, but I will be back in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie, and we are discussing this morning the children who abuse their parents. And I don't just mean abuse them by calling them names. I'm talking about physical abuse, sexual abuse in some cases, which is just horrendous to think of. And the fact that parents feel powerless to prevent this from happening, that it is their child. And a quarter of children were 5 or under. This is key findings I've got in front of me. A quarter of children were 5 or under when the abusive behaviours began. 30% of parents changed their mind about calling a professional in case their other children were taken away. More than half of parents are physically attacked every week by their own child. 17% of parents are experiencing sexualised behaviour from child, like I said, reaching up to and including rape. 68% of these parents didn't get the support they wanted when they spoke to a professional, and more than half of parents struggle for 3 or more years before seeking support. 13% of children have strangled or suffocated another child living with them. And there's also a whole section here on abusing and killing pets as well. So it's really psychotic behaviour. But what is causing this? Why is this happening? And it's happening in increasing numbers. And this has got to be, in my view, it has got to be to do with society's attitude to coddling children. And of course I don't agree with abusing children or beating children or any of that stuff. Of course that is entirely wrong. But children, it seems these days, are growing up with a sense of entitlement, with a sense of no fear from anything. There's no fear from discipline at school. I mean, I'm just reading today another suggestion now that if a child is truant, the teachers are not allowed to ask them why they weren't at school in case it causes anxiety. I mean, it's things like that that absolutely drive me to distraction, because there is no accountability, it seems, for children. They don't have to explain themselves because it might offend them or it might hurt them. You know, there's no discipline, there's no police getting involved. There's social services are looking at the parent and saying it's the parent's fault. None of it seems to be of any consequence to these young people. They just don't, there's nothing, there's no repercussions to anything that they do, up to and including beating their parents or raping their parent. I mean, come on. Why is it that we're just going, oh, poor little children? There's no accountability, and now there's social media. So they're all egging each other on. They're all the big I am, aren't they? These boys at the age of 11 saying nobody shows me any respect. It's like, what are you talking about? You can't even spell the word. You know, what are you talking about? We're seeing more children on children violence out on the streets. It's always a 14-year-old that stabs a 14-year-old or a 13-year-old that rapes a 12-year-old. We're seeing this now. This has just been normalised by us, the adults in the room. The adults in the room that are just going, oh, well, we must protect the children. Well, what about protection from the children? What about children being protected from each other? What about discipline? What about holding children accountable for their behaviour? Where is that? Where is that? I mean, at my school, there was even the suggestion of fear, and we would toe the line. Fear is good. Fear saves us. Fear protects us from stuff. It's important. The children don't fear anything. They don't fear the police. They don't fear the schools. They don't fear their parents. They don't fear anything. They're quite happy just to carry on, do what they want, behave how they want, and there are no repercussions. Society has created these monsters, and society has to be the one, or we have to be the ones that teach them how to be children again. I'll be back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. This is Talk, and it is Petrie, and we are discussing the final taboo, really, that is never discussed, and that is child-on-parent abuse. 19% of parents are physically attacked every day by their child, 35% are attacked weekly and 22 monthly. 72% of parents are verbally abused by their child every day, 20% experience weekly verbal abuse and 4% monthly. 34 also display abusive behaviours in public. 18% display these behaviours at school or college, and 24 are abusive in front of family and friends. 97% of parents have changed their routines and lifestyles as a direct result of experiencing child-on-parent abuse. 73% have been cut off or have had contact reduced by a loved one because of their situation, and 36% of children have hurt a pet or an animal, and 1% have killed an animal. Let's go to the phones. Grace is in London. Morning, Grace.
Hi.
Hi. Good to speak to you again. I've missed you.
Oh, I don't know why you all miss me, but we've all missed you. It's good that you're back to talking to people, because
Yes.
we appreciate that.
Yeah, that's exactly why, because I love talking to you guys. This topic is so under the radar, isn't it? It's so not spoken about, which is obviously why I wanted to talk about it.
Well, if you watch EastEnders, then they've been trying to cover some of this.
Oh, have they? I don't watch
yeah.
it.
Oh, you should. There's been quite a bit about this in EastEnders recently, and I think that's a positive thing about soaps. As much as
I agree. I agree. I wasn't aware that they were doing that. Oh, that's good. I'm glad, because this needs to have a light shone on it. Yeah.
I have an acquaintance. I'm generally lacking in friends, but I have an acquaintance who rang me up a couple of years ago to tell me that a friend of his had just killed his own mother, and my acquaintance had to get in contact with the police and turn his friend in, and was very stressed about the whole situation, and having to go to court to be a witness and all sorts of stuff like that. And I wasn't sure what to say to my acquaintance, because I've got no idea about or anything like this in the first place. So it was hard for me to reassure him about what to say, because he was perplexed as to how his friend could end up doing this. It seemed so bizarre to him. His friend had seemed so normal, and then suddenly his friend called him up to say that he just killed his own mother and was about to kill himself. And from things that my acquaintance said since, it seems that his friend had a kind of gradual shift of mind towards very misogynistic attitudes.
Right.
I think there are obviously all sorts of factors involved in this topic, and with younger people, obviously, there are going to be things to do with stress or various outside influences, or neurodiversity comes up, but as a person who's neurodiverse, I slightly find it difficult to see that as a reason.
I hate that as well. Blaming, violence on a mental health issue, I think is degrading for those people who have mental health issues and are not violent, right? All sorts of, even psychopaths, not all of them, are violent.
Yeah, and I think also that for each human being, it's good to think about a degree of personal responsibility rather than just blaming various other forces. Yeah. But anyway, with this friend of my acquaintance, I've not ever had any contact with this guy who killed his own mother myself. I've just heard about him via my acquaintance. So I don't know much about him myself, but obviously he's an adult. But I do think that one factor that some adults and young people have in common at the moment is this influence towards serious misogyny.
Yeah.
That is very scary.
It is very worrying. Yeah,
I'm seeing more casual misogyny online just in the last few years than I ever used to. And it's not, massively a problem if there are just some idiot men online trying to mock me. That doesn't matter. But when it becomes dangerous, it's very worrying. And something that occurs to me is that, and I'm sorry I bang on about this all the time, but I think that one of the shifts we've had in our culture, you're quite right, there's more of a sense of entitlement, not just for kids, but for everyone, like Prince Andrew. But also I think that for a while in our culture, there was this male role model who was peaceful, who told us to turn the other cheek, who didn't fight violently with people to try and attain power. And Jesus kind of influenced a way that people thought a man could be that was positive. He stood as something to aim towards that was good and also male. And now instead you've got male role models like Andrew Tate who are telling young people that the way to be a man is to be violent and to exert dominance. And it's kind of reverting to this kind of primitive idea that we did have in our country in Roman times, that might is right, that you dominate others to be masculine. And young people are kind of looking for some direction to head in and some kind of role model, and ending up with these horrible, horrible things spewed at them through various online platforms. I say Andrew Tate, but obviously there are various imitators of Andrew Tate saying similar things. This EastEnders storyline has had a kind of similar figure that some of these teenage boys are watching online, and it's disturbing. I don't have kids, but I've done some child minding, and I have just been worried for these little boys I'm looking after, thinking what are they going to end up seeing on their screens, because they're all kind of on things. And I suppose you need to be imparting values that are positive from a really young age before these other things can influence them too much.
I do think that there's a lot going. There is a lot going on here to create the environment where these children, boys and girls, to feel that they are in control, that they're all powerful, and that is partly social media, and I think it's partly society as a whole. As I was just saying, I think that we've taken away any actual accountability. There's people, kids, adults don't have to explain themselves anymore. There's no accountability. There's no repercussions, it seems. I mean, even as an adult, if you commit a crime, the likelihood of you going to jail is pretty slim now. All of those things, they play into a societal norm where people can just get away with whatever they want. And there are no constraints now. There's no morality or when we were kids, other parents would tell us off. Well, you don't get that anymore. because parents adults are too afraid to tell off a child that isn't theirs, because they'll get shouted at. Do you know what I mean? So there's none of that. Whereas we were all being clipped round the ear and told off by every parent in the village if we were seen to behaving badly, and we were accountable. But we're not anymore.
I feel like ultimately you want to have people hoping to do the right thing, not only because of potential consequences if they do the wrong thing.
Yeah, but as a child, that's how you learn, isn't it? The right from wrongs. You know, when you're 5 years old or 6 years old, when somebody says, "Oi, you know, don't do that." That I think there is a process where society has to hold you accountable, and we all used to hold each other accountable.
And I think another thing about the society that's changed over a few generations is that young people are surrounded by advertising all the time from a really young age in a way that people weren't previously. So we're being told from a really young age, you should have this thing if you want this thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, people are manipulated into thinking that
they can have whatever they want whenever they want it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's another factor that contributes. But yeah, I think that there's a real need for positive values to be imparted that aren't just self-confidence and self-esteem, because there's a lot of that, and that's important. That's a good thing. But I feel like that's kind of become the only thing that our society wants to tell kids. Actually, we need to also talk about sometimes putting other people first, and sometimes being humble. Those things, I think, have been kind of lost to some extent from our ideals.
Yeah, I just think we've taken children's childhood away from them for a start, and we've given them nothing to replace it with, and we've also just let them have carte blanche to behave in any way that they want to, and there's absolutely no comeback on any of that. Grace, great to talk to you. Thank you. I've got a message here that I want to read out. It's quite a long one, but it is worth it. It says, I'm a serving police officer, so I can't come on the show for obvious reasons. However, I was once called to an incident where a 12-year-old child had taken a hammer to his mother and beat her up to the point she was locked in the bathroom, terrified. A neighbour called us as she heard the lady screaming. We did everything in our power to get social services to take this child away from the parent, as this was not the first time this violence had happened. He was violent at school with other children and with teachers too. The poor lady couldn't cope with his violence, which I think he'd seen from his estranged dad, who was also an horrendous domestic abuser. Social services just kept saying he needs to stay with the mum as she has parental responsibility and she needs to be a parent. I felt powerless as we had arrested him, but nothing happened as the lady was too afraid to make a statement about him. I have no idea what happened to that lady, but I hope she's okay. This was a few years ago. And that's from Mike. I don't want to say where I'm from, if you don't mind. Of course I don't mind. But that kind of explains a lot as well, isn't it? That the police are told that they can't do anything, and social services are going, oh no, he needs to go back to his mum and she needs to be a proper parent. And it's like, well, this has gone beyond that. This has gone a bit far, right? This is not normal childlike behaviour. I mean, we all know that teenagers can be vile, but that's the normal vile, right? Not beating your mother with a hammer. That sort of goes beyond that parental and child contract, right? That's not reasonable. But this is happening, and it's happening in houses in your street, maybe your next door neighbour. This is happening more than you think to people that you know, but you don't know about it because they're too ashamed to tell you about it. They're too embarrassed to tell you about it. But it's happening. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. This is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you, back with the phone-in. So we're talking this morning about child on parent abuse, and we're talking about the kind of abuse that would not be accepted from anybody else, right? This is, you know, being beaten with a hammer, being sexually abused in your own home by your own child. We're talking about, you know, being beaten, harassed, insulted, violated by your own child. And in any other walk of society, that would not be acceptable, right? It is not acceptable. The victim wouldn't be blamed for it. So, I mean, it's taken a long time, and still rape victims are sometimes told that it's their fault they were raped, which is ludicrous. But this is accepted somehow. Oh, it's the parents' fault. They are the victim. It just so happens that the perpetrator of the crime against them is their own child. They feel guilty. They feel ashamed. They're scared that if they report their child, they'll get a criminal record that sticks with them for the rest of their lives. They don't tell friends and family because they'll be judged as being terrible parents. But this phenomenon, this violence by children, some as young as the age of 5, is a growing, it is mushrooming. It is a real problem. And it's never spoken about. It is the final taboo when it comes to violence, because it's a child doing it to an adult. And yet if that adult fights back, for example, earlier on I spoke to a dad called Craig, who was told that if he responded to his son's violence, he would be the one that got arrested for it, because he's the adult. And yet the child was beating and kicking his wife, curled up in a ball on the floor. A teenage boy. They called the police. The police just went, well, you've got to find a way to deal with him. But you can't do this and you can't do that. The system is set up to protect children from violent adults, and that's good. That's a good thing. But there's also violence from children towards their parents. They can't just leave. If it was a partner, they'd just go, wouldn't they, eventually? And they would be, you know, have arms thrown around them, and they'd be supported and cared for and looked after. But when it's your child, you can't just leave, especially if you've got other children who are being affected by it. Lots of messages coming through. Let me read some of those before I go back to the phones. Jill says, well done, Petrie, for talking about these entitled children. This gentle parenting is ruining children. They have far too much say in what they will put up with. Proper discipline is non-existent. A great show, as always. And I thank you, Jill. But I don't, you know, it's not, I don't think it, I think you're right as well, because parents aren't allowed to discipline, are they? They're not allowed to do anything, otherwise the children will then go, well, I'm going to phone social services, or I'm going to phone Childline, or whatever. Discipline is different to abuse, and I think that that has all been lumped together now, hasn't it? That if you discipline your child, if you smack your child, that's akin to beating a child, and they are two very, very different things. They are not the same. They're not even in the same village. Right? They're just not. A smack of discipline is different to a beating from an abuser, but they've all been pushed together. And children now know that they can do anything with impunity. That nobody's going to correct them. Nobody corrects them out on the street. You know, we used to be corrected all the time. Nobody corrects them at school, because discipline can traumatise a child. And nobody, even now, I was saying that if a child plays truant, you can't ask them why, because it might cause anxiety. This is all bonkers to me. And so children believe that they are in control, and they exert that control through violence at home. Carol said, you just saying that reminded me of something I heard an old neighbour say many years ago. If you don't discipline your kids, you get the society that you deserve. And society is to blame for this. We've gone all wishy-washy with children. The pendulum has swung too far from the dark days of kids being beaten and abused to where we are now, where they can just do what they like. And they don't even fear prison, because they know there aren't any prison spaces. So they're like, oh, whatever, I can do what I like. And we see violence, children on children, stabbings, killings, murders. Kids killing older people in the park. I mean, what the hell? What is happening here? Jay says there's a complete lack of parental discipline. When growing up, I was terrified of making my dad angry, even though he was not violent. These days, kids are told they can do what they want without consequence. Therefore, they will be violent towards their parents and teachers. And it's the same thing that I'm talking about. It is that lack of accountability. We've given children carte blanche. And at the same time, we've removed their childhood from them. They're not kids anymore. And Evelyn says, I work in the justice system and went for domestic violence training and brought up the issue of domestic violence against a parent. I was told it's not an issue that is named in this way. I have a client who killed his mum with a pitchfork, and prior to her killing, she said to me how she couldn't understand why professionals were calling her son a monster. Why is this issue not being recognised as a genuine issue and being called what it is? How many mothers need to be murdered by their children before domestic violence against a parent is recognised for what it is? It doesn't even have a name yet. It doesn't even have a name. And all the statistics I have in front of me, it's horrifying. Another Carol now. Carol! How are you?
Okay, I'm still breathing.
I'm glad. I missed. Now the phone-in's back. We can talk again.
I've had to have an address. I've had to have an address. But watching you tonight, I thought, my God, I'm so involved with this. So there's two areas with this. I mean, of course, I have to get in the area of being that victim as a horrendous childhood. Absolutely horrendous childhood. So I can understand going from the children's area, and then I go into the parents' area, you know, like, and I've watched, you know, with the grace of God, I really do feel sorry for the parents, you know, like having to go through. But I do think there is something that's missing within the government to help everybody, which is family abuse. You know, instead of, you know, like this abuse, that abuse or whatever, there should be something within the area of family abuse. Yeah. I've had social workers with this and that and whatever, and it's absolutely horrendous. A load of rubbish, can I say that? In the nicest way.
I just don't think they understand a lot of it.
And the reason, I'm going to be honest now, I'm 64 years of age. Don't forget, I might be out on the 1st of November, that's my 65th birthday, you know, like with it. So I'm going to give it you now, you know, like with my old experience, you know, like with it. They haven't got a clue. They come out of university, it's not their fault, blah, blah, blah. They have 12 weeks here, 6 weeks here or whatever. They haven't got that lifespan of people like myself and people that have been on the television today. You know, like, with it, you know, like, there is a massive, massive problem with our young generation. Massive. I don't understand. I call it the robots. I went to Sainsbury's today to go and get me shopping, and I'd just come back from my sister who has learning difficulties. She lives in Bury and I live in Manchester.